the main event here. Derek and I got to go see The Flash, and yeah, I know there's a spoiler warning in the beginning of the episode, but hey, look, if you don't want to hear anything about this film, because we're going to talk about all the spoilers, then you should turn the podcast off. We'll see you next week. I love you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Have a good night.
Goodbye. So The Flash came out on a Friday. We saw it Saturday morning, like a bunch of old fucks at 11:30 a.m. I'm gonna just do, broad strokes here, and then, obviously what we always do, I'll do broad strokes, ask you how you felt about it, broad strokes, and then we can get into some details. And there are definitely details that I want to discuss. So, broad strokes, and I told you this basically in the parking lot. It's the same spiel I gave you then. I like this movie. I had a very good time with it. I know that I definitely know that it's not perfect. There was a lot of hyperbole that came out about this film ahead of its release, which was very, I think in hindsight, stupid to do because it's just a comic book movie. But to me, at least, I don't know how you feel about it, it was a well done DC comic book movie. And I just got like 3/4 of the way through, I just went like, man, this just feels like a DC movie. Like this just feels like what I want the future of DC films to start to go into. Like not the exact same mold, but it just, it helps that this is one of my favorite comic book storylines of all time. And, here's where I'll leave it. Like for now, the reason I like this story so much and the reason I like the comic books and the animated series and now the film is that there's no like big evil villain that wants to come take over Earth. There's no blue beam in the sky. Well, I guess Zod's machine technically made a big beam in the sky. But it's not some like Thanos, I'm dominating Earth, or dark elves and Thor. There's no like fuck you guys because fuck you guys. This is a story about a guy who can do. He's a god, and I've discussed this ad nauseum on this podcast. The Flash can literally run back in fucking time, and he decides to use it to save his mother and to save his father too, who's in prison for life because of what happened. And he destroys everything. He fucks up the timelines. He, as they say, it's all spaghetti at the end. And he realizes that the only way to save it is to carry that pain. And they hammer this point home. Both Batman hammer the point home, I think, but in different ways. Barry eventually comes around to saying this point on his own and says exactly the point to his younger self. And I really just love the Flashpoint storyline so much. That being said, I have criticisms of the film that we'll get into, but as a broad stroke, I really enjoyed it. And I know that I'm biased, but I did ultimately really enjoy it.
No, I thought it was very good. There's something about it while watching it that was irritating me about it. For some reason, became the thing that I enjoyed about it most. And that's that, like, well, you kind of just said it, like, in all these movies, there's some big showdown. There's like, who's the big bad guy? And they make you think, oh, it's Zod, it's X, it's Y, and they have to get the good guy. They have to get Sasha Cal, blah, blah. And like all those points, they kind of just go nowhere. Like they never really. And I kept going like, man, there's no satisfying like, But then I just think that it was cool to do something a little different.
It's an emotional climax.
Yeah, it's like a battle with himself. Like literally, he's separate from himself as another version of himself, and it's like him going like. It's just him realizing he just has to accept this, like you said. I don't know. There's just something cooler about that, to have this bombastic AAA fucking multi-$100 million movie and just have it not be about this like showdown at the end. I mean, even with whatever the like older Flash, like that fight was like literally 25 seconds long. It was not talked. Like, And exactly. And then Barry B, or whatever you want to call him, just took the killing hit for him. I found, and again, something that irritated me about it, I ended up coming to appreciate about it, and that was that the long hair Barry, that's the only way I know how to differentiate them.
Ooh, are you about to steal one of my points? Go ahead.
Was super fucking annoying, like too obnoxiously annoying. Sorry. I did steal your point, it looks like.
We'll see where you go with this.
But I think that was the point, that Barry is already in sort of like this iteration, Ezra Miller's Barry has always been to me like borderline, like he was annoying in the other movies too, but it was always like just enough that you're like, all right, he's the kid of the group. He's the speedster, right? So he has that like, like skittery kind of personality. Yeah, and so you're seeing a version of himself where he was coddled with those personality traits. So of course he's even worse. So the thing that amazed me the most about this was that Ezra Miller really killed it. Like, he really did a good job in this movie.
Fucking murdered it.
Dude,
I loved it.
I was like moved to tears by his acting at some points. Like, he really did an excellent job.
I don't know. You probably didn't look at me.
I can hear you when you start crying every time we start watching movies.
Well, I was silent, motherfucker. But
no, you do that. So, you make this sound. You go. That's always the signal.
Hold it in a sense like I was coming. I might have been. Who knows? He acted so well. I can't at least. No, the scene in the grocery store, and he's like,
"Yeah, dude.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Yeah.
It's making me upset thinking about it." He has to go put the tomato back, and I'm holding the lump in my throat down so hard because it's not only am I right next to you. I don't care if I cry in front of you. You know, I cry all the time. I'm next to a complete stranger on my left, and so I'm watching, and it doesn't happen often, but I just feel them start to come down the sides of my face, and I'm gonna act very cool, calm, and collected, and I gently went, like I had something in my eye,
exactly,
and then a couple seconds later I went in for the other one. You did use this one of the points I was going to, but it's that something very different from the Flashpoint story is Barry doesn't like in the Flashpoint comic book. He wakes up in this timeline where his mom's alive. He has no power. He takes the place basically of that Barry. Whereas in this one, there's two of him. And I think it was a really brilliant way to have very visible character growth to the audience, because you're right. Not only do we have like what I would call a hyper annoying version of him, because he has these abrasive personality traits that have been amplified by the fact that he's had no real conflict in his life. He had his parents, he's coddled. They paid for the apartment for Christ's sake. I was like, fuck you. Really? Your parents got that kind of money? He's had all these memories with his mother. But then on top of that, we have 10-year older Barry he's had less abrasive versions of those same traits. I said abrasive again. I didn't mean to.
That's okay.
Less
Say it again.
severe, less hardcore versions of those traits just because he's had a harder life. And then on top of that, he's been through the events of the Justice League. And I mean, there's literally a point where he's like, can you just stop talking? He's like, Jesus, I see what everyone means when they say that. And I remember thinking like, that's awesome. Like and he plays off of himself. So like, they're very distinct. I would always be able to guess which Barry was which Barry by like a second or two of dialogue. Yeah. I thought he did a wonderful job. There's a couple quiet moments in this movie where, and one of them was in the trailer that still got me, even though it was in the trailer and I knew it was coming, where Keaton's like, why do you want to, you can go anywhere. Why do you want to save this one? And he's like, cause it's the one where my mom lives.
Yeah.
And I was like, God fucking damn it, Ezra Miller, you groomer. This is how you did it, isn't it? You acted well. And then they followed you anywhere. I'm kidding. It's fucked up. Those allegations. Who knows? The parents said he did. When the kid came of age, said, no, not really. It wasn't like that. So, who do you believe?
I will say this, though. My big negative for this is like, I have now been exhausted with multiverse shit. I am over multiverse.
Yeah.
Like, it's done. Like, between Quantumania and this and Doctor Strange, and I'm done. Like, this is the last one. I'm fucking tired of it. Let's do something else now.
Wait. There's one more, though. Spider-Verse.
Oh, shit. I'm not done yet.
You gotta watch that one.
That's right. You're right. I'm not done at all. I'm just getting started, baby.
So I still have more positives to talk about, but let's do a little negative sandwich where I put it in the middle. Two things that bothered me about this film. One, there's some shitty CGI in it, which is to be expected
bad
in a superhero film.
Yeah.
But so here's the thing, and we talked about it in the parking lot. I read an article before we went to go see it where someone said, hey, some of the CGI sucks. And the director said, well, some of it's intentional. And listen, I don't know if I believe this or not, but here's what he said. He said some of it's intentional. It's, some of this is through Barry's eyes and what he sees in the Speed Force and blah, blah, blah. There's a part of this that I can accept as him being truthful. In the Chrono Bowl, the way they show time travel, which I thought was really cool. It's this like Coliseum layout where he's in the middle and it's almost like slides of different points of life are shuffling through him. It's like rewinding a videotape. Those to me were some of the worst looking CGI, but I think they were supposed to represent like vignettes. Like this was almost like a drawing of what that represented in that period, which is fine. The problem is if you want it to be that way, if it's not supposed to look real life, then do something that is so very overly explained to the audience is not supposed to look realistic.
Yeah.
Because instead of me going, oh, it's supposed to be like a vignette, a representation of that moment, not the actual real life moment. It just looked like CW CGI.
Yeah.
It didn't look like you were trying to do like a hyper stylized or something like that. And I would say the only reason I give him any credence to that story is that I think 95% of the shitty CGI was in those scenes for me.
I think the only really shitty CGI was just like the faces. Like the faces were the only thing that sucked. Everything else looked great. Like all the special effects looked incredible. But yeah, I agree. I think it was a cop out. I didn't think of it in the way that you're talking about it, as if they were like representations of that. But you're right. Like if you were going to do it that way, it should have been more abstract. It shouldn't be have been anywhere in the realm of like true to life.
Yeah.
If you're just going to lean on and say like, oh, well, the only reason it doesn't
because then it just looks bad
that way. Right. Yeah.
To my brain, it just looks like you didn't spend enough money on it.
Yeah.
There was like one or two times I remember making a mental checklist of like, obviously when they have two Ezras in the scene, I don't know how they accomplished it all the time, but one or two, and I would say like a good chunk of the movie, I didn't even think about it, which is a testament to how well some of the CGI was. But there was a couple moments, I think one right before the big Zod fight, where I could clearly tell that one was the fake Ezra.
Right.
And the other one was like the role he was actually in. And it only happened once or twice, which again, they're together a lot.
Yeah.
That's a testament to some of the really great CGI in this film. But it's so weird to have like some really good CGI in a movie where there's also some really bad CGI in the movie.
Yeah.
Again, which is why, again, I'm kind of leaning on wanting to believe him, but I just think it was done poorly if that was your intent. My second problem with the film was the cameos that they had were, some of them were funny and some of them were like, oh, nice nod. There are omissions to, it's like you're basically throwing everything in the kitchen sink from a DC movie because you can. That's the point of the Flash. He can go anywhere. For Christ's fucking sake, I don't know if you recall this, Ezra Miller made a cameo on the CW Flash show. There was a big crossover. It was very small, but there was they played it off as if the show was what made him call himself the Flash in the movies, because he had never called himself anything. He shows up for a split second. It's shitty CGI. It's in Star Labs. It was over one of the big crossover events on the show. He shows up. He's like, who the hell are you? And they're like complimenting each other's outfits. He's like, oh, that's very sleek. And he's like, oh, you have lots of plates. The armor makes sense. And then he was like, are you the Flash? And Ezra Miller was like, he went, oh, as if it's like, oh shit, I should call myself the Flash.
Right.
So here's my thing. I don't even know why I went off on a tangent like that. If you're going to show up and make if you're going to bring Christopher Reeves back from the dead as Superman, which he's been dead so long, I almost feel like they passed a mark. Like use old archive footage. Like you don't have to do that. Again, leads more credence to it was supposed to be stylistic, but I digress. Nick Cage Superman, which is a deep fucking cut. There have been behind the scenes images of him in a test costume where it never got made. I don't know if you've seen them. He's got long hair. Kevin Smith famously, that's a Kevin Smith reference, the big spider. Kevin Smith famously recounted how he was asked to write a Superman film that never got made. And they said, I have 3 requirements. I don't want him in the fucking suit. I don't want him to fly. And he's got to fight a big spider in the 3rd act. That's a joke. And they actually made the goddamn fight scene.
Yeah.
Adam West. And then it just felt like, if you're going to put these cameos in here, whether you want to differentiate yourself from the TV universe or not, which is kind of besides the point because the Flash show is done now.
Yeah.
Grant Gustin, regardless of the show, to a lot of people has been the Flash for the last like 10 fucking years on TV. And I feel like to not have him in there was almost disrespectful.
I've seen a lot of people say the same thing. And I have no relation to, like, I have no attachment to that show, and I agree with that. And I also think beyond just that, I had read this post, someone said that it's weird, like in it, like you just said, like the whole thing is the multiverse, and ultimately you just kind of had like 3 cameos. And at that point, it's like either have none or have 40. Like,
yeah,
when you're only
where was Christian Bale's Batman? Right. Everyone knows Christian Bale's Batman.
Or even like have a clip of Kevin Conroy's voice or something. You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna do,
I would have cried at that too.
That's what I'm saying. Like you have like literally the fucking multiverse is your oyster.
Yeah.
Like just go nuts. Like if you're only doing these, and I'm not saying like they should have all had a major part in the movie, but if you're only doing these 3-second little Nicolas Cage clips, do more. Like it would have been more fun. And instead, it's just like you get like 2 or 3, and it's like, oh, is that it? Like and I hadn't really thought that watching it, but reading that post, I went like, that's a good point. Either do like none. Or just do like dozens. Like it was just weird to only have like less than a handful. It was kind of strange.
I was very disappointed Grant Gustin wasn't at least honored for I mean, like I said, the show's done, and I know that it fell off the wagon after season like 3 or 4 to most people, myself included. I stopped watching it. But I thought he did a really good job in that role. He really embodied that character in a different way than Ezra has. And it felt weird and like I said, like kind of like a slight that they didn't have him pop up for anywhere for some little cameo. Also, the George Clooney thing at the end made me laugh, but I think to general audiences it's confusing because I think to most people they think that the in-universe Batman is now going to be George Clooney and not just a gag. Like there's no expectation that this Flash will move forward with the DCU. He might show up in a different iteration, but that universe is not the universe James Gunn is playing in. George Clooney's not going to be Batman in the new Batman movie. And so while it was I laughed at it and I was like, holy shit, like the guy who literally like hates his own portrayal of Batman, they got him to come back in for a minute and say hi. It felt again in the realm of cameos. I felt like they kind of fucked up.
But that might be my favorite F-word use in a PG-13 film ever. Oh, okay. Who the fuck is this guy? And then the film ends. I thought that was fucking hilarious.
Okay. So those are my 2 negatives. We're almost done. A couple minutes left. A couple positives. This movie was much funnier than I thought it was going to be. And to the point where like a lot of superhero humor can be like cringy, but you kind of chuckle still. There were some genuinely very funny moments to me when he's back in time and he sees his younger self coming in. He's like spending time with his parents. It was the first time. And he goes, shit. And they're like, what? And he goes, I got a shit. And I don't know why it got me. It just fucking got me.
When the one who puts the suit on, he's like, it's really tight in the dick.
Oh, yeah. It's really tight. He's like, yeah, now I get it. He's like, in the dick. Okay. Also positives, Michael Keaton, bro.
He was incredible, and his action scenes. Well, I know they weren't him, but
right.
They were.
I was gonna say
they were really cool, though. That was like some of the best Batman action that we like high intensity Batman action that we've seen. Are
you ready for this analogy? Because I thought of this a couple of days ago, and I'm ready to come over you with it.
I'm ready.
So obviously, Michael Keaton's like 70. This is supposed to be an older Batman. It's a superhero film, though. Got to give it a grain of salt. And we get to see him do some incredible shit as Batman. And watching it, we're like giddy. You and I had seen some of this in the trailer, and we're still like, oh fuck yeah! I remember looking over at you. We were both like, yeah. Here's the thing: watching him basically get his own warehouse scene with those guards felt like watching Darth Vader in Rogue One.
Yeah. Like one last. Exactly.
In the opposite way. Obviously, Vader's a villain, but. You watch those Keaton films, he punches guys, they fall off screen. It's one hit, they're done.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of action in him. He's in a hard cast rubber suit. He can barely fucking move in those movies. So to see him come back, and in your head, you're like, he was a badass as Batman. And then to see it realized and to see him like fucking people up and just being a fucking like, he was so good. It was really great to see him. You can tell he revels in the role. They gave him a nice send off, to be honest. I mean, probably the last we'll ever see of him in the Cape and Cowl, but Barry's like, I'm sorry, I can't bring you back, and he's like, you already have. And whereas most times I would think that was really cheesy, he just
was really good.
Well.
Dude, that's exactly how I felt about it. I'm like, any other person, any other actor saying that line, I would have scoffed it away. But like from Keaton, the way he fucking just barked it out, I was like, I'm covered in goosebumps just thinking about it. It was a really great, like, dying line or whatever.
Yeah. There's so much I like about this movie that, I'm going to continue to ramble, but, I enjoyed
Batfleck's action in the beginning was fucking tight too.
The entire opening was when he was grappled onto the car and being pulled down the highway.
Yes,
that was one of the times when you and me went, like I was maximum cum power.
Yeah.
The random Wonder Woman cameo.
Yeah.
I would love to have seen this movie before James Gunn took over, because Henry Cavill did film scenes for this that were cut out. And that was another thing that perplexed me, because you would imagine he was cut out to not confuse the audience. They've already told the public he's not coming back. There's a new DCU coming out, one of the first of which films is going to be a new Superman. But then you have like Clooney show up at the end and imply that he's the new Batman when it's clearly not going to be. And I don't know why you wouldn't just give him the fucking cameo and send him off. I mean, for Christ's sake, you had Wonder Woman show up. We had Ben Affleck in the beginning, who was awesome. The lasso of truth scene. Batman mumbles to himself, I could fight crime by solving poverty. Like he literally.
Did he really? I missed that.
Yeah. They were going back.
I just like when he was like, I have way too big of an ego to thank someone.
They made this gag in Justice League, but it still works wonders here at the Lasso of Truth. They're all both tied up. Barry makes some sex thing about never having understood. He almost doesn't believe sex is real because he's never had it before. Yeah. And Batman's lines are killer, dude. He says the one you said about having too big of an ego to ever thank anybody. And then he kind of leans down and he's like, I could just fight. I could just solve crime by, or I could just fight crime by solving poverty or something like that. Was really, really fun.
I think I was laughing so much from the first one that I missed that because I didn't even hear that line.
The biggest compliment I can give this movie is I came home and I went to Samantha and I went, I wish that we could go back and watch it. I wish I could show this to you because I want you to see it and I want to see it again. Last thing I will say, we're okay, whatever. But last thing I'll say is you talked about the ending, how it was just like a conversation off basically. And yeah, I mean, even Dark Flash, who obviously is corrupt and not making great choices in life at that point, doesn't come off to me as overtly evil. He's tragic. He's the sad character who's like, I can fix it. And the only, I just really enjoyed it because I like I love current Barry. And I like how he tried to protect, like the whole arc of both Barrys made sense to me. I like just by character work. I enjoyed how current Barry was trying to shield younger Barry from the reason he came to this universe. Yeah. Why would you tell him this? And the entire motivation for Dark Flash just adds up to me. If an alternate version of me showed up and doesn't tell me why he's here, and then the world is ending and he gives me powers and I'm fighting with him, I'm like in this euphoric, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm a fucking superhero. And then we try to fix it and we can't. And he tells me that the only way he can fix it is by letting my mom die.
Yeah.
What the fuck do you say to that? Of course the answer is no fucking way. I'll figure this out. It just clicked. It's the reason why the Flashpoint storyline is so good to me. And yeah, that's it. I'm ranting and raving.
Yeah.
But,
no, it was great. I really liked it. Definitely a flawed movie. It's done pretty poorly. It has not made a lot of its budget. It was like 60 million opening weekend, which is not great. And that's disappointing to me because as much as it is still a flawed superhero film that's subject to a lot of the tropes and again has some poor CGI and some shitty cameos, at the heart of it, this is the direction I want DC films to go. I want these kinds of stories for these heroes where they might be big and bombastic, but at the heart of things is really a morality tale. And I got rumors that Manchester Black is going to be in the Superman film. And if they go down that road of the world no longer needs your antiquated, I'm going to so goddamn hard. Yeah.
That's it. That's all I got.